Hi, everyone. Life Coach Carissa here with you today to talk all about progress book and parenting. So this video is going to be beneficial for the parents of school-aged children that follow me. However, if you are a grandparent or you have friends that have school-aged children, maybe stick around because you could pick up something here that maybe you would want to share with someone that you love or care about. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be sharing what Progress Book is, my experience with how we utilized Progress Book in the past with our son, and how we utilize it today with our daughter. And lastly, I solicited some input from our son and daughter on this to get their thoughts and feelings about it. So I'll be sharing that as well. This is all mine and their personal experience. I know that everyone can have a different experience, and I absolutely respect that. So I'm not sure if everyone even knows what Progress Book is, or you may have something by another name, but our school district introduced Progress Book to my husband and I back when our son was in elementary school. And Progress Book is an online classroom management platform that lets you view your child's grades, homework, schedule, attendance, and report card information. And when this first came out, I thought, how awesome. Like, how convenient. I can keep tabs on what's going on myself and not rely strictly on what I'm being told. And then I was like, oh, I can check up on him and verify what he tells me. But what I didn't know at that time was that my controlling tendencies were going to make Progress Book an entirely new job for me. So when I sit here and think about it now, it seems like it should just be a helpful tool and very harmless. But that is not the first experience I had with it. And so I was really compelled to share this information for any parents out there that may be feeling things that I experienced, and I'd like to give them some support in regards to that. So I really want to make it clear, I am not saying that all parents fall into this pattern that I did. What I am saying is if you find yourself in a position that some or all of what I share maybe rings true to you, then maybe allow yourself to pause and drop into curiosity with this information that I'm going to share. And, maybe it will be helpful to you. So, perhaps you could even take this opportunity to reframe or intentionally decide how you want to use a tool like this in your life with your child. So, of course, I have the advantage now of looking back and seeing the results of my actions. And if I can help any parent, create awareness and pull them out of that autopilot behavior that maybe they're stuck in, or maybe help them see what results they're getting from their current protocol with this platform, then I would love to be able to support you on that journey. So, okay, so when I think back to what using Progress Book looked like for me and our family, I'm actually quite embarrassed to admit it. I will tell you. At that time, I owned my own company with my two brothers who were also my business partners, and I was actively involved in the day-to-day operations of that business. And I had so much on my plate each day that I really should have stayed focused on the tasks that I needed to get done. That's a whole separate topic, but let's look at what happened. So once I became told about the Progress Book tool, and I was going to be able to monitor my son's grades, I signed up with my own login. It linked me to my son, the student, and I was all set. And I had this bookmarked on my computers, my laptop, my desktop computer, on my phone. And I can recall that at my worst moments, literally, I would log in and check hourly some days. Like, I can remember sitting at my desk at work when I had a whole list of other things to do, and I would be refreshing, waiting for something to change. When I think back to those moments, like now I can see that my control issues were in full effect. And it was almost like a compulsion to keep checking, for updated information and updated results. And so I recognized that my reasons for checking that platform so frequently were coming up for my own unique reasons, and maybe your reasons will look different and not exactly the same, but it would be a really good first step to know what your driving reasons are for why you take the actions that you do. So to look at this a little bit, with curiosity, I would suggest asking yourself these questions to start. How often do I log into the platform? What is my frequency? Do I have a routine with it? Do I have parameters around it that kind of keep me in line? Do I check it once a day, once a week, once a month? Second would be, is there a conflict that arises as the result of the information that I view on Progress Book? Have I been involved in arguments with my child due to the grades that I have seen in Progress Book? 3, how do I utilize the information that I view in Progress Book? Do I have a structure for when I, discuss this information with my partner, my spouse, with my child? When do I talk about it? How do I start that conversation? Number 4, in what ways has Progress Book improved life in our home? And then on the flip side, the last question, number 5, in what ways has Progress Book negatively impacted life in our home? I suggest these questions because I wish I would have had these questions posed to me about 10 years ago when my son was younger. So reflect on what comes up for you in these questions and notice what you're feeling in your body. Is it a defensive, negative response? Is it curious and open-minded? What is that energy that you're feeling when you go through those questions? Because if you're feeling a negative energy, I would get to the root of that before you truly can be open-minded about answering these questions. Okay. So how about I go through these questions and answer them based upon my former self 10 years ago? Which I'll try my best to do that because it's not the 10-year-old version of me. It's this more wise, well-rounded version of me now. But here's what I think I would have said back then. So number 1, how often did I log into the platform? Okay, so it escalated pretty quickly to where I was looking at it like 20 times a day. And I can remember having a thought, like I can remember sitting there and thinking, I wonder if anyone can see how frequently I log into this because I think they're going to think I'm a crazy mom. So I always wondered that, like, do teachers know? Does anybody see how often I am logging into this platform? Number 2, was there a conflict that came about as a result of the information that I viewed in Progress Book? Yes, there absolutely was. I would see things and get frustrated and text my husband about it midday, or I would sometimes just bring it up as soon as I saw my son, which sometimes was late in the evening. I was only home for a few hours with him before he would go to bed. And the first thing I would do is bring up that stuff. I can actually remember times when I would just pounce on him as soon as he walked in the door from the bus. And number 3, how do I utilize the information that I viewed in Progress Book? Well, I would allow it to distract me, to frustrate me. I would sometimes use it to catch my son in a lie. I would make it mean whether he was going to be successful or not. I felt a lot of fear. Like fear was a big feeling that came up for me. Like I have to get this under control. Number 4, in what ways did Progress Book positively improve life in our home? From my experience with our son, I really can't say that there was anything positive that came from that being brought into my life. Now, with our daughter currently, we do have a better relationship with it, which I'm going to talk more about in a little bit. Number 5, in what ways did Progress Book negatively impact life in our home? Well, I allowed it to create conflict in our home, with our relationship with our son. I did not have a plan on how to utilize this tool. And so it kind of took on a life of its own. And I became so focused on letter grades. I started to do the same thing with our daughter, but we moved away from that, which again, I'm going to be sharing with you. So that's how I would answer those questions. And again, I invite you to do the same and see what comes up for you. Okay. So I asked our kids, I thought, I'm going to pull them into this because I want to hear straight from them what their perception was on it. And I know my kids may not be representative of everyone's kids out there, but I just thought, I'm going to see what they think about Progress Book and how it played out in our home. how it is playing out in our home, and see what they have to say. So our son is 21 and our daughter is getting ready to turn 14 in about a week. So my son shared with me that he remembered worrying about his dad and I talking about his grades every week. And I found it interesting that he said, even though I knew I would be fine, it was still very stressful to have you guys talking to me about it all the time. And I think what he meant by that was, progress book is sometimes not accurate to the minute. Sometimes assignments were completed, but were not entered yet by the teacher. And that could vary between teachers. Some would enter grades in more quickly than others, and some would take a while. Maybe do it right towards the end, closer to the end of when the report cards were going to come out even. So when there would be a 0 listed for an assignment, there could be several reasons. And, my son also shared with me that he was the kind of kid that knew if he could still turn in an assignment late for full credit. And so he would take full advantage of that. So he really went on to share that it just felt like it was a lot of unneeded stress that led him to not wanting to really be transparent with us about how things were actually going. And I can see now that I think he spent more time around how to navigate those conversations with us, the recurring grade and missing assignment conversations, than he really did focusing on the work. So all these years later, having experienced the negative environment that I created with the information progress book provided me about our son, I really didn't want to repeat this with our daughter. And I can still remember having this urge in the beginning with her to check it constantly. It was like I was picking right back up where I had left off. And I think it was more that I was just trying to control the urges through willpower. I had not been on my own, personal growth journey of life coaching and, where I learned a lot of these new tools. So I was really just trying to resist repeating those previous behaviors that I knew didn't lead anywhere good with our son. I also knew that my daughter was a different child and that it would not be the same exact situation we had with our son. But I was still very concerned about how I should utilize this tool. And I can recall at one point after COVID and the virtual learning, had started, my daughter was not doing well with her grades, which was unlike her. And I remember having a conversation with her about her grades, and she just became very upset. And it became very obvious to me that she had had some memories of seeing how I had handled and dealt with our son, and she was kind of in fear of that. And so that was a moment for her and a big realization for me that there was some negative energy around grades in our home, and it was rooted in a lot of what what had happened years ago. So my husband and I, we decided, we talked about it and we decided that we would have our daughter present her grades to us just once a week. It would kind of be something she was in charge of. So she would literally get her Chromebook out, open the Progress Book app, and she would read off what's happening in each class. She would say the subject, what her current grade was, and if she was missing any assignments. And we really tried to not focus so much on the letter grade as what was missing. And we did that for the rest of that school year. And, it worked out fine. And the next school year, our daughter really had taken charge of her schoolwork and had asked us, could we eliminate this weekly grade check-in? She's in 8th grade this year. And I had the realization one day, I thought to myself, my parents didn't have this platform. And I'm not saying they did everything right. We're all, parents trying to figure it out the best that we can, right? But they just received a report card. And that was when the progress of my work was shown on paper. And it was that final grade for that period. And teacher conferences were available when there were concerns about a student's progress. I had to go to those sometimes, I believe, as a kid. And so I asked myself, do I need this tool in my life? Does she really need me to have this tool? And since then, we decided that we would let our daughter's grade card report show the efforts of her work and her comprehension. And that has worked out well for us up to this point. Now, granted, through that year that we kind of had accountability, she showed us that she was in charge of it. And that's what allowed us to kind of loosen that poured a little bit, from watching her so closely. And so when I asked our daughter to share her thoughts about and feelings about Progress Book, about the platform and how we utilized it, here's what she shared with me. She said that she prefers what we do now over the weekly check-ins. She shared that the grade checks every week added pressure. And she said that even if she was going to get a C, she got scared. I don't know where that came from because I don't ever remember having that conversation, but it could be coming back from when our son was younger. Maybe there's something she remembers there. And so she said there was this pressure to keep them good for the check-ins, focusing on us and to meet our needs. And she said that she was constantly worried about it, and it made her really not focus on her work. And so her grades would end up suffering as a result. And she shared that, that the outstanding assignments were just waiting to be put in sometimes. And so her focus became on just not getting yelled at by her parents. And so she was now emailing teachers and, checking in to try to make sure that the grades were entered to not get yelled at by her parents. And so she went on to say that, like, sometimes the parents aren't working with all the facts. We don't know when there are certain teachers that take longer to enter things in, that we don't know maybe when a teacher saw a trend, maybe with an assignment. And so, maybe the teacher had made adjustments and curved to get those grades up, but they were still really low. Like, she just shared that there's so much that we don't even know. And that she felt like, we're just seeing one aspect and we're then having these conversations based on that. And, she really said in the end that she felt like, from her opinion, that the tool is really there for kids to manage their grades and not really the parents. And so I thought getting that input from them was very powerful. And, now listen, even as I say all of this, there is this part of my brain that is saying, well, of course it's our job as parents to watch what our kids are doing, to keep them on the right path, to correct them and hold them accountable, to verify and confirm what they're saying. I get all that. Like I said earlier, this platform may not be an issue for everyone, but if you are someone that can relate to the negative results that I have kind of shared in this video, I want you to know you are not alone, and there are other ways that you could maybe structure this. If you use your prefrontal cortex and plan intentionally for what you want the results to be in your life and your family, you can find a scenario that will maybe work so much better for everyone. And since I have been more open and shared my experience about this with other parents, I've heard from them that I wasn't alone. Like, there are other parents that are in this habit of checking Progress Book or similar platforms, whatever yours is called, way too often. And they've reacted in unproductive ways with their kids. I also heard stories of parents seeing bad grades during COVID and yelling at their kids. And I think this is really eye-opening because none of us were prepared for what COVID and virtual learning was going to bring about. Even in ourselves, right? It brought up a lot of our own insecurities and worries and fears. And so our kids were going through that too. And so I just thought that was interesting that, we were so focused on what that tool was showing us that we maybe missed some of what the deeper struggles were that they were also dealing with at that time. So what I thought would be really helpful is I did just a little bit of research on this, and I looked for some experts in parenting that had a few ideas when it comes to these Progress Book type platforms. And so I thought I would share that with you as well. There were some great takeaways. So one thought is that, kids might actually need to receive a few bad grades before they can correct the course themselves. Or maybe they need to turn in an assignment late a couple of times to see the importance of time management without having the parents prompting them to do so. And so one suggestion is to let the children monitor their own grades and rely on the teachers to alert the parents if we need to get involved. Another contributor shared that instead of logging into her kids' online grade portal, she sends an email to the teachers at the beginning of the school year and lets them know that her goal is to help her child build up that executive function skills, such as like organization, planning, and, that promotes them to be very responsible for their own life. And so she will not be using the portal this year to check up on her child's grades. And she asked the teachers to request parent conferences at the scheduled times or reach out to her if her child becomes off track in a significant way. So I thought that those were some really great ideas for alternative ways to approach this whole conversation. So look, I am certain that as parents, none of us want to add stress to our children. And I'm not saying that we are doing this with negative intent. It could just be the pressure in society for our children to be the best, to perform the best, and reach their full potential. It could be for reasons of your own, right? Just like me, something that was coming from my past, something unresolved, controlling, fear about my kids not being successful, right? I had to dig in and see where all that was coming from. But I just wanted to start a conversation that perhaps there is a better way, a way that promotes individual responsibility and allows our homes to be a place of peace and comfort, not just more of the school environment at home. We want them to have rest, right? When we come home from a long day at work, what do we want our home to be? A place of rest. They want the same thing. Our primitive brains will tell us stories that create fear and panic and worry and having us question our kid as soon as they step off the bus, like in my case, right? I remember one time my son got off the bus. It was rare that I was home when he got off the bus, but apparently I took advantage of those opportunities because I can remember this visual of him getting off the bus and coming in and me asking him about a test score. And the crazy thing was he didn't even know what he had gotten yet. And I think I remember it being not a very good grade. And so I just had all of this negative energy, right? As soon as he walked in the door, the grades were probably entered after he left school. He didn't even know yet. And I tell you, I am so not proud of how I showed up at all in some of these situations with our son. But I am so grateful that I learned and I modified my approach and I made positive changes. And most importantly, like I've been listening to what my daughter tells me. I challenged what my brain was telling me, and I listened to what she told me. And together we found a new way that worked for both of us, the parent and the child. So remember, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. My situation may look nothing like yours, but again, for anyone out there who it does look like it for you, you're not alone. You know, if your involvement in your child's grades is not adversely affecting them or you, then please continue. But if it does, you know, if it does cause that negative energy in the home, then this may be something to look at. If it works for a parent and their involvement creates high performers, I'm not saying that this is bad across the board. But just like in every situation, there can be a downside. I just want to help bring it to light so that you can evaluate how it's working for you. So I strongly encourage you to consider asking your child what they think about that relationship between you and their grades and this online access. Just see what they say. Then get curious with those questions that I shared earlier and decide what will work best for you and your child. All right, everybody, that is what I have for you today. I hope you find this information about Progress Book or similar tools that you use insightful, and it gets you to thinking about how you want to show up with these tools that we have at our disposal. You know, technology as it advances can be great, but with everything, we have to intentionally decide how to incorporate it into our lives, right? So this is no different. We need to look at this tool as something that can work for us. It can work against us. We get to decide, right? It's all about the awareness of what it's creating for us in our lives. So if you are a parent that is not in a very good place with it, please ask yourself these questions. Please talk to your kids and see if maybe you can modify it. It's not set in stone once you find a new path. You can deviate and change it and mold it as you go forward, but start somewhere, right? Have that understanding with your child, what's going to work best for you guys. All right, we've got this, parents, one day at a time. All right, everyone, thank you for listening. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button to my channel to be the first to hear when I release new videos. And if you really like the content that I'm sharing, I encourage you to let me know by clicking the like button and maybe sharing this with your friends and family. All right, everyone, have a great week, and I will see you next time.